Good morning, internet folk. I hope you're doing well on this fine Tuesday morning. Let me know how you're doing down in the comments. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Minolta MAXXUM 7000. This camera is older than me. This camera is older than the internet. This camera was released in 1985. Whereas the internet, and of course all of you fine internet folk now have access to it, was fully released in 1989. That is still a lot older than I am, I'll be honest. This camera is a film camera from the year 1985. It was my grandfather's camera. He loved it, he used it well, and now he has bestowed it upon me.
Wow.
I have never used film. In fact, I've never even held film that hasn't been already processed. I have single little pieces of film from my grandfather that has been passed down, and if you hold it up to the light you can see it, but that's all I've experience with. Now I have experience with the negatives and processing it, and it's been one heck of a learning curve, I'll tell you that. In this video, I'm going to tell you my triumphs, my tribulations, and everything in between. This is the first film camera that I have ever held, and I've been trying to learn how to shoot with film for about 2 weeks now. I am from the time of digital cameras. I have my smartphone, which is a mirrorless camera, and I'm currently shooting on the Canon 90D, which is a digital single lens reflex camera, or DSLR. Even with having shot with cameras for over a year now, I still struggled to pick up a lot of these aspects. A lot of these parts are foreign to me, and it took a very long time to get used to them. And honestly, I don't even know if I am used to them yet. It's been 2 weeks of near daily usage. Spoiler alert, I've destroyed an entire roll of film by exposing it incorrectly, so that sucks. The first step I did was order 35mm film on my non-dial-up internet, because, you know, I've never used dial-up, but I hear it was great. It arrived a few days later. I have never actually seen a film camera or film in stores except for the Fujifilm instant Polaroid cameras. You know, the one where you click, prints out. I'm going to put it right here on screen probably. But before I tell you about my experience with the Minolta MAXXUM 7000, which, fantastic name by the way, I want to dive into the interesting history of the Minolta MAXXUM 7000. It gets spicy. This camera is known for having both automatic advancing and autofocus before any other camera. It was released in February 1985. Nikon and Pentax both had autofocus SLRs. They had to be used with special motorized autofocus lenses, but I thought that they were called DSLRs. And I just did a video exploring the difference between DSLRs and SLRs. You can watch it right here. Now, just a quick rundown of what an SLR is, because I didn't know what it was before doing this project. SLR means single lens reflex camera. I've mentioned it already in this video and in the how DSLRs actually work. But let's do a quick rundown in case you haven't seen those videos, because I care for my subscribers and keeping you up to date. Single lens reflex cameras use a mirror and prism system so that you can view your composition before you take the picture through the actual lens, which we're all used to. But apparently there was a time back in film cameras where you'd have to look through a different hole than you're shooting through, which would change the angle and the composition ever so slightly. And people, they didn't like that, I guess. It blew my mind, to be honest with you. I didn't realize that you'd have to be looking through a different hole than you're shooting through. I didn't realize that because I've never had to experience that. And that's been a common theme with this camera. If I'm being honest, I didn't fully know that, because I've been shooting with smartphones and DSLRs since 2016 and 2020 respectively. Back to the Minolta. The MAXXUM 7000 had the autofocus motors in the camera body, so the lenses were cheaper and lighter. Something I haven't heard a lot while researching this camera on YouTube is the legal troubles that Minolta went through while this camera was in production. It all started with the double X, as Exion, that's an oil company by the way, found that this infringed on their logo. Minolta was allowed to sell their remaining stock with the trademark infringement, which apparently makes your camera worth a lot more. Sadly, my camera does not have the double X's that are intertwined. So my camera, not worth as much to the people on eBay, I guess. I still think it's pretty cool.
Round 2. Fight!
Leica camera company, yes, that Leica, that invented the autofocus lens back in the 1970s, but Leica sold that patent, to the Japanese rival, Minolta. Reasoning that its customers, Leica customers, knew how to focus and didn't need autofocus. Much later on, they would run into trouble because of this purchase. A company by the name of Honeywell would sue them over the autofocus system that they bought from Leica. Honeywell, in a patent infringement case against Minolta involving patents on autofocus camera. February 7th, 1992, a jury finally decided on what the outcome of the trial. To Minolta's dismay, they decided that Minolta did not steal Honeywell's technology and that it infringed on patents unwittingly. But just how much did Honeywell win? Total settlements of approximately $500 million. Now that is the juicy history of the Minolta MAXXUM 7000. Let's get into my experience of what it's like using this camera. And this project has been so big that I'm gonna have to split this video up into two parts. Number one is this video, which dives into the history and my experience using the camera. Part two dives into the pictures that I've gotten back because it takes some time to mail them away to a darkroom, and an interview that I'm going to do with another photographer that has been shooting film cameras for longer than I have. She's been instrumental in giving me tips and tricks on how to use film cameras. When I told her that I opened up the camera and was trying to roll the film back in by hand, she cringed because I had destroyed that whole roll of film, which had taken about 3 days to shoot. It had pictures of beavers, birds, beautiful landscapes that will never ever be repeated. And I just destroyed it by accident because I opened it up. But let's get into my experience with the camera. Okay, so here's the thing. The first time that I loaded the film, I loaded it incorrectly. The second time that I did it, the pictures were taking, it was advancing nicely and everything, but that is the film that I unraveled and caused to be exposed to light. So that's all ruined, there's no saving it, so that's just garbage. Sucks, but that's how it is. I have been okay with using the Minolta system. It's been a completely different experience than shooting with digital cameras. For one, I am so used that after I take the picture, you look at the back to preview it, but there's no back on this. There is no screen. You don't even get to see what pictures you've taken. You don't get to see if it's in focus. You don't get to see if it's exposed correctly. I still have no idea if any of these pictures are well exposed or not. Another thing is how loud this autofocus motor is. You ready? That is insanely loud compared to what I'm used to. I am used to much quieter motors, such as the motors in this lens. They are very quiet and they don't scare away the wildlife. I have been practicing with manual focusing on both my modern day lenses and on my Minolta 70 to 210 millimeters. Manually focusing on the Minolta is actually really cool because they have this system where it's two arrows to tell you, you gotta go closer, you gotta go further, and then there's a green dot that lets you know when it's in focus. And that is a very cool experience to have. Honestly, a big help has been my fellow YouTubers here on YouTube. I'll link a couple of videos down below that I personally used when trying to learn how to load and offload the film, because you have to wind it up when it's in the camera. And that is absolutely crazy to me. I have found that it's actually pretty fun shooting with a film camera. There are some drawbacks, like not being able to see the film. It is slower. You can't see what you're filming. You have to send it away, and it's more expensive. There's many other drawbacks, but the tactile feeling is actually pretty cool. And it's been a very unique experience, and I think that I might keep on shooting at film. Not as much as I shoot digitally, but I think every once in a while I'm gonna break out the film camera and just shoot it every once in a while. That's just how it's gonna be, you know? It has been actually super nice because this film camera is a lot lighter than my 90D with the 100 to 400. It's so much nicer to carry. I was following Fox tracks for like 2 hours, and with the Minolta, my neck didn't hurt at all. I had the strap carrying the camera, and I didn't really worry about it because it was so light. I was snowshoeing through like deep forest in the snow, and I didn't have to worry about how heavy it was or that I'm gonna get sore. But I do think that the instant acknowledgement of if you got the picture or not of DSLRs is still unmatched by film cameras. I find, and I know that the older audience is going to say, well, of course, that's how your generation is. But I found that everything to do with film cameras is a lot slower. Everything from taking the pictures, to viewing the pictures, to editing the pictures, to the focusing motors. Everything is slower. But at the same time, that's also a good thing. It causes you to not be so stressed, not to be so caught up in constantly, instantly moving forwards. I found that it was actually pretty nice. That is my first experience with the Minolta MAXXUM 7000. And more generally, film cameras as a whole. Now, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. There will be a part 2 with an interview and showing you how the pictures actually turned out. I am now at a critical point in shooting on film. I have just hit 36 pictures. Last time I opened it up and tried to wind it up by hand, thus destroying all of my pictures. And after looking it up, I believe it's this little R button, maybe? So I figured that out. You have to press it and pull this thing back, and it's gonna keep whirling. And then it should stop eventually. Either that or I turned on the paper shredder mode. I'm not sure. And now our film is back to 0. So I believe that means it should be safe to open up this thing. Yep, our film is completely in. So now we are going to put this in its package and then load up the next one. And this one will be shipped away to be developed. So now we're going to take out our little film. We are going to throw it in here, put our cap on, leave it in a dark space until we ship it off. My camera is trying to use its flash right now on video because it's a little bit dark, but I'm fighting against it so that I don't expose it and ruin another film. Because this one's all gone. I might still send it and see if they can do anything with it, but it was wide open and exposed, so there's no way that there's anything on it. And now we're going to take this one, you're gonna slot it in, you're gonna pull this over, past the red dot, and there are little teeth right here. You wanna make sure that that tooth right there is meshing with it. Make sure it's seated well, it's meshed well. You're gonna close it, and then you're gonna turn on your camera, and it's gonna whirl up and advance it, I think they said 3 times. And now we have 1, and we have 36 pictures left.